Hello and welcome to today's edition of Business Basics. My name is Lee Iben. I'm the head coach here at Action Coach Campus, a business coaching company here in Iowa City. And today, we try to spend at least once a day with a local business owner. And today, my special guest is Shawn with Buck Creek Distributing. I have to say that slow, Shawn, because I don't want to mess up my words. Hi, welcome.
It's mouthful, Lee. Yeah.
It is a mouthful. So, Shawn, tell us about this business that you're running and what it's all about.
Yeah, so Buck Creek Distributing is a distributor of inputs primarily into the regional craft brewing industry. So we do a little bit of work in distilling, a little bit of work in winemaking as well. But started its sort of seminal background was it started as a hops growing and processing business. So Mark Pattison, who's my partner and the founder of the business and the kind of entrepreneurial spirit behind this thing 6 or 7 years ago, decided it would be a good idea to attempt to grow hops and process hops in eastern Iowa, and did a pretty good job of building what became the biggest hop grower and processor in the state.
That's amazing.
And then realized at some point, 3 or 4 years in, that it's a little like the wine industry where I'd spend a little bit of time. The old adage was, the way to make a little money in the wine business is to start with a lot of money. And I think that's probably that adage applies in hops as well, which is it's a great hobby and you can probably make a little bit of money doing it if you work really hard, but it's tough to make it commercially viable as sort of a one-trick pony. And Mark and I kind of connected. I had come out of a run in the food and beverage space, most recently managing a local business called JM Swank that I had run under ConAgra ownership for a number of years, and then managed the sale of the business to a private equity owner and run it under private equity ownership for a couple of years. And I had the luxury of being able to, move out of that business and was really interested in doing something in the local marketplace. And Mark and I connected and thought, with his background and kind of entrepreneurial instinct and his the work that he'd done in the hop space and my background in, food ingredients and beverage and distribution, we might be able to combine forces and see if we could build a distribution platform to really help the regional craft brewers out. And we felt that was a space that was being a little bit underserved by the two national players. And I think we've got a lot of reasons for optimism based on the work we've done over the course of the last 18 months or so.
We talk quite a bit about niche marketing and niche selling, and you guys have really identified a real niche. I mean, the craft brewery business has really exploded in the past, 5 to 7 years, I think. And then you guys are coming in and offering these other ingredients that people can purchase from you. Do you guys work primarily with customers in the state, or how far out do you reach?
We call our current geography Iowa and surrounding states, but and absolutely our intent is to we do certainly do a little bit of business in Nebraska, a little bit in Minnesota, a little bit in Wisconsin, a little bit in Missouri. We have historically shipped hops all over the country, so we've got some touch points in broader geographies. But our focus really is, you could call it Iowa and states that border Iowa at this stage. So probably 90% of our business today is within the state.
That's fantastic. And I know when you mentioned you were with JM Swank, when they got that whole thing started, they build that by a railroad so they could distribute products quicker, right?
Yeah, I think Larry Pesce, who kind of grew up in that business and took it over in the early 70s and built it to a national scale. Speaking of entrepreneurial instincts, if you ever have an opportunity to talk to Larry, he's an interesting guy. But yeah, he really started that business as a bakery-focused distributor, so not wholly different than the space we're operating in right now.
Yeah, I've had coffee with Larry a couple of times. He's a fascinating person. But for you guys, Shawn, distribution isn't so much of a headache as it used to be back then, is it?
There are always different kinds of headaches. I think in the space, the transportation markets are always challenging, and probably more years than I care to speak to, but in the 30 years or so that I've been involved in the distribution space in one facet or another, it's a completely different industry than it was 3 decades ago. The last mile stuff is so critically important today. Speed is, breathtakingly fast compared to, the world that I grew up in, and it's no different in the brewery space. Brewers have become accustomed to expect that they can place an order and have a truck show up at their door with a pallet of malt and hops and,
Right.
packaging materials in, 24 to 48 hours in some cases. And that's a speed that I don't think we would have ever considered even 10 or 15 years ago.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, that's the trade-off, right? Distribution methods are probably a little easier than train now, but now so is our patience have gotten much lower.
Right.
We
Yeah.
want it now. We got this great idea. Let's have everything by tomorrow, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And there's also a lot more customization today. There are a lot more SKUs. People are used to, being able to walk into the grocery store and have a breadth of product offering again that none of us 3 decades ago in Iowa would have ever considered. And the brewing space is no different. They're all, the trends move fast. People are really interested in, what's hot, what's the beer style that really is going to take off in the next year or so, and being able to supply the inputs to support that is certainly a critically important part of our business. We really view this as much a collaboration play as a distribution play. So, part of what we're trying to do is get out there and help brewers understand what's going on in the industry and really take an entrepreneurial approach to how can we help you focus on what you do best, which is make really good beer.
Yeah. And so, Shawn, tell me how you guys went from this concept, this great idea, really, and to where you're at today. It's all about marketing and finding those customers, your target market, so to speak. How did you guys go about doing that? How did you develop that plan to make that happen?
Yeah, we learned through the school of hard knocks, I think, as is often the case. So, we spent the first 6 months really trying to dial in and figure out value propositionally. Does our hypothesis hold up? And what we hypothesized is there are 2 national distributors who really own the domestic marketplace, and neither of them have much local sales presence in the less dense markets, of which Iowa is a perfect example. And at the same time, as you alluded to earlier, the industry is growing fast. It's a sort of interesting side note that I think we broached the 100 brewery market a year or so ago, and I think today there are, the COVID attrition aside, or 115 or 120 breweries in the state of Iowa, which interestingly is about the same numbers there were prior to Prohibition, if you can, want to run back that far. For a little historical perspective. But our thought process was you got a lot of these guys that are out there really passionate about what they do, in a lot of cases really revitalizing downtowns and really creating communities around their brewery. And how can we really step in and help support that movement? It's a passion-based business, and so the school of hard knocks part is what we really had to do is get out there and interact with people and darken doors and talk to people about, what are their needs, to try to dial in on how can we help best. And
you bet.
What we've learned is that, these truly are generally a population of businesses that value relationships. They value local presence. They value people that can help collaborate and help them identify solutions for problems. Notably, cans are an enormous problem for everybody in the beverage industry right now. And one of the areas we've been able to help recently is we've identified, just through sheer kind of grit and determination, some supplies of aluminum cans that weren't readily available in the Iowa market, and bring that to bear to breweries to really assist them through a sea shift and customer dynamics in the COVID environment, as breweries have had to move quickly pivot from really where all the growth was a year ago in on-premise sales to distribution sales. Many of them didn't have access to good can supplies, so we've been able to get out there and support the industry quite a bit in that effort. That's certainly one example of our broader portfolio.
Sure. So you can help with the internal ingredients in manufacturing the beer products, but then you can also help with the exterior packaging as well. Is that correct?
I think, anything that you're using directly in the manufacturing process, we view that as part of our bailiwick. So, whether it's cans, whether it's other forms of packaging material, whether it's malt, whether it's, as I mentioned earlier, hops, whether it's, we have a great relationship with, one of the big international yeast suppliers right now, so we can bring some of those biologicals to play.
Mm-hmm.
Our intent is probably not to have the breadth of portfolio that some of the national guys have, but to have inputs that really are commonly used, that are readily available, that can be at your doorstep at a moment's notice from a local distribution point, along with the knowledge that goes with it. So we've got a couple of our folks on the team. We have probably, in my mind, a guy named Christian Peterson on our team, who's the as good a hops guy as from a technical standpoint as exists in the Midwest. He came out of the agronomy program at Iowa State with a focus on hops, and is a guy that sort of grew up in the industry. So those kinds of unique attributes and unique the unique knowledge that exists with the business is a big part of our value proposition.
So tell me a little bit, Shawn, about the science of scalability within your business. I mean, you went from 2 people roughly starting out, and you're more than 2 now, I assume.
Got a half dozen full-time staff, and actually are actively out there looking at some folks to supplement our sales efforts right now. We certainly have some grand plans in terms of adding to that, but like most businesses have really tried to ratchet back a little bit in the COVID environment, where our view, and your crystal ball is probably just as good as mine, is we expect to come roaring out of the back end of this thing, and
we better.
And we think there's going to be a real appetite for people to get out and kind of re-engage and sit in the sunshine at their local brewery. So we're trying to position ourselves well to make sure we can ride out the storm here for a little bit, and put this thing on afterburners when we move out in the spring.
Exactly. We're all looking forward to that. All right, Shawn, I know you got to go pretty soon. So just a real quick, you learned a lot. I mean, 30 years in the distribution business, and now you're here in the hops business, and with Buck Creek. Give us a little bit of wisdom for a business owner out there. What's your nugget for the day, Shawn?
Yeah, well, I think it's what I alluded to earlier. A lot of this it's knowledge that I've certainly gained over the last 30 years, but has really come into sharper focus in a different kind of business environment as I've pivoted in the last 18 months or so, which is, there's no substitute in times of trouble for having really sound relationships and having people that really can trust that you're going to do the things you can say you do day in, day out, and be there to field the problems when they come up. So, I would say I've always been a big believer that relationships are important to business, as we all, increasingly live in a spreadsheet and remote environments, but the ability to really deal with people as kind of real individuals is critically important to our business, and I think critically important to many of those businesses. And I think our ability to take advantage of that now is going to yield dividends as we come out of the COVID crisis.
I completely agree. Thank you, Shawn. I think that's more inherent for Iowans. We value those businesses and handshakes. And I know that from others who have gone out to the East Coast, West Coast, they look for those Midwestern values. That's what they call it. But for you and I, it's just a way of breathing air. That's how we are.
Yeah,
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you for sharing. Shawn, don't go away. I'll wrap this up real quick so you can get going too. Hey, thanks again for joining us today with this episode of Business Basics. My guest, of course, was Shawn Meany with Buck Creek Distributing. And look them up online. If you're in that space, by all means, give them a call because they can help you out. Thanks again, Shawn.
Thank you. Take care and have